Welcome back to the series of 3 habits of highly successful Muslims. The clear objective and intent of these short videos is to review a great character in Islam, someone forgotten, yet their great contribution on Muslims and even on the world sometimes is radiant even today in our time. We will analyze their circumstances, the situation, what made them great, how they thought, how they made decisions, how they achieved their goals and dreams. We will see how that character applied those 3 principles or habits of highly successful Muslims: learn, plan, and execute, and how by applying them they've reached their goals and dreams. Before I get started, if you have not watched the introduction to 3 habits of highly successful Muslims, I would recommend you watch it first. It's only 12 minutes. The link is on the bottom. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, فَقْصُصَ الْقَصَصَ لَعَلَّهُمْ يَتَفَكَّرُونَ. So relate the story, perchance they may reflect. Therefore, in the sessions and the videos we're going to be meeting to talk about, we will comply and consider those lessons and as guidance. May Allah reward us. Our character that we are going to talk about today, his name is Mohamed Ibn Abi Amer. Every time I tell his story, people think that it's so dramatic and so inspiring that it's almost a fiction story, but it's actually true. B, they've never heard of him. Muhammad ibn Abi Amir, Muhammad ibn Abdullah ibn Abi Amir al-Ma'afiri al-Yemeni. He was born in 938, died 1002. He's known to the West as al-Mansour or al-Manzur or the Victorious. His story is so inspiring, dramatic. Muhammad, his father, his great-great-grandfather arrived with Tariq ibn Ziyad, and he was one of his main lieutenants of the army. Muhammad's father died before he was born. He was a scholar. I think he was also a judge. He died on the way back from Beltram. Muhammad grew up in a very small family in Al Jazeera Al Khadra, or the Green Island, all the way southern Spain. Um, Farming, working. His job was actually in transportation, provided services with his donkey, basically carries people around, place A to B, or provide services, moving goods and so on. But Muhammad was extremely ambitious. He was very determined. He had a very positive outlook on life, almost crazy. It was said that there's a story, whether the story is true or not, but it's written in a lot of different places in literature, that Muhammad uh, ibn Abdullah ibn Abi Amir, after he finished a day, he was very young, 16, 17 years old. Him and 2 of his best friends were doing actually the same job, moving people around donkey. At the end of the day, they sat down, their back to a big tree. They were overlooking a bit outside of the city of Cordoba, overlooking. And Muhammad looked up the sky and said, "What would you two wish once I become the Grand Vizier and a ruler of all of Al-Andalus?" Uh, his 2 best friends looked at him, shocked, and they started to laugh. He said, "Why are you laughing?" They said, "Well, obviously, look at yourself. You can't even feed yourself, you can't feed your family, and you're too young. You have no way of getting to be um, to be the grand, vizier and ruler of Al-Andalus." And he said, "No, I'm serious. What would you both wish for?" So, the first person said, "Well, since you insisted, my wish would be that you would grant me a huge palace." And he went on and on. He said, "Well, if you give me 100,000 gold pieces, over 1,000 Arabian horses, and so on." He just went on and on and on. And then Muhammad said, "Are you finished?" He said, "Yes." "Is that all you want?" He says, "Oh, absolutely. That's a lot. Yeah, yeah, that's all I want." He said, "Okay, I'll grant you all these things." Then he looked at the other person. He said, "What about you? What would you wish for?" He said, he was very sarcastic. He didn't believe him. Obviously, he thought that this was crazy. He said, "Well, because you insist, I don't think you would ever get to be this person. So therefore, if that ever happens, sit me down on the back of a donkey facing the opposite direction, um, and paint my face all black and drive me around in the market, and in humiliation, and tell people not to treat with me, whip me 60 or 80, in the middle of the market, and then he's just looking at him and say that you would never make it. So he was just making fun of him. And so Muhammad told him, "Are you serious? Is that what you want?" He goes, "Yeah, I don't think you will ever make it to be the Grand Vizier, Hajib, or the ruler of Al-Andalus." The story goes on from there that Muhammad ibn Abi Amer he was very smart, he was very ambitious, so he started to, one, learn, two, plan, and three, execute. And these are basically the three habits of highly successful Muslims that we always talk about. You first have to understand you assess the situation, and then two, you have to plan very carefully, and then three, execute and never give up, and have a hope and dream that you'll always get to your goal. Muhammad did exactly that. I think he's a perfect example of our three habits of highly successful Muslims. One, he figured that I would never become the Grand Vizier and the ruler if I continue to do this job. I need to move on and do something else. I need to get closer. Two, I got to plan my future. So I'm going to need to educate myself. I need to start looking at certain types of skills that would be acquired, very important. People want to have it so that I could get rewarded for it. And then three, I can't rest. I have to be relentless. I have to continue to work really hard, and I would never give up. Well, what did he do? One, he moved closer to Cordoba, outside of Medina Zahra, and he sold his donkey and decided that he's going to open up a little shop. And prior to that, he had very, very good hand written skills. He could draw, very neat. He also learned. He went to Jami'a Cordoba al-Kabir, and he learned Hadith. He learned Arabic. He learned history and science and so on. So he's a very learned man. He also trained pretty hard the art of the sword. He was a good fighter, and he learned the skills of battles and so on. Acquired even languages. He learned the Berber language. He learned other languages. So he became a very, very educated person at his age. At age about 23, 24, it took him like 6 or 7 years to acquire all the skills. He opened up a little shop across from the gate of Medina Zahra, where everything was happening. At his time, at this point, the Khalifa, Abdurrahman al-Nasir, Abdurrahman III, had died, and his son, Al-Hakam al-Mustansir, was actually the Khalifa at this point. His wife, Subh or Aurora, had a son, Abdurrahman, and he was very small. The shop that our hero Mohamed Ibn Amer set up was actually doing scribing services. So he would write petitions, he would write poems, he would write for service for the people that going in and out of Medina Zahra, and some of the noble people, some of the elite groups and so on. Aurora, or Subh, the wife of the Khalifa, heard of his skills, and she said to Al-Mushafi, who was the Grand Vizier at this time, and also to her husband, the Khalifa, that she would want Muhammad ibn Abi Amir to be in the service of as a guardian of her son, to educate him and train him and bring him up to be a learned student. So the Khalifa asked Al-Mushafi, the Grand Vizier, said, "This is just make sure, double, basically do a background check on him, make sure that he is worthy of this job." And so fast forward pretty quickly, he becomes the mu'addib, or the guardian of Abdurrahman. Fast forward, actually, Abdurrahman dies, and then Hisham and Muayyad Billah becomes the second son. and he stays in and becomes the guardian of Hisham al-Mu'ayyid Billah, Hisham II. At this point, he starts to actually become very visible to Khalifa. The Khalifa realizes how skilled he is, so he gives him the ministry or the place of management for inheritance. So he was almost a judge. He was also a judge in Ashbilia or Seville. He had different jobs. He started to graduate in different kinds of jobs. He actually started to also become uh, the top chief of the middle police. And the middle police at this point was, or at this time was, a police that actually manages the conflicts in the market. And then he also graduated to become a judge in Morocco. Also, he became the grand chief of all the police force before the Khalifa died. So as you can realize, Muhammad ibn Abi Amr worked really hard, provided skills. Also, he was very relentless. He was very diligent. He planned pretty carefully. He moved from a job that would never get him to be where he needed to be to achieve his goal to somewhere closer. But at this point, I mean, there's no way that he's going to become the Grand Vizier. I mean, becomes a bit of a powerful person in Medina al-Zahra and around the court of the Khalifa, but there's a distance from where he is and where his goal is. But being close to where you need to be is what you need to do. You want to continue to be closer to it. You want to continue to build the foundation and the friendship, and then things will happen for you. So luck would have it, you know, one morning people get up and the Khalifa had died. His son at this point, Hisham the second, was only 12 years old, and the guardian was Muhammad ibn Abi Amer. The Umayyad's family started to contend who would be the next, in line. Since, Hisham was only 12 years old, one of them, decides that Al-Mughira, Ibn Abd al-Rahman al-Nasir, he would be the second person. Uh, but but basically, this in order for that to happen, it would be a conflict with Ja'far ibn Uthman al-Mushafi, who was the Grand Vizier, because it would basically take away everything that in his control. So al-Mushafi wanted to have al-Mughira killed. So anyway, they decided that they would kill al-Mughira and then form a committee of three the most powerful people to oversee decisions from Hisham, who was a little kid, only 12 years old, until he comes of age. The three people become Ghalib al-Nasri, who is the grand top commander of the Northern Army. Ja'far ibn Osman al-Mushafi was the Hajib, or the Grand Vizier, and then the third person would be Muhammad ibn Abi Amir, who is the top chief of the police force. From there, Muhammad ibn Abi Amir starts to get closer to his goal. He makes a good friend with Ghalib al-Nasri. He marries his daughter, and then they both come together to eliminate al-Mushafi. Actually, the way they did it, and Mushafi was kind of a person who was very hesitant. He was not a D type. He was not a kind of an A type. He was not decisive. The northern Christians started to raid in Saragossa and around the northern Andalus, and people started to talk. Nobody's taking actions. Al-Hajib, Jafar al-Mushafi is not doing anything. Muhammad ibn Abi Amr actually took this as a chance that he raised his hand and said, I'm going to take the army, I'm going to go fight. And Mushafi said to him, but you have no skills in leading an army. He said, well, send Ghalib al-Nasri along with me. And Ghalib was actually a very talented, very skilled warrior and a leader. So they went together. In 54 days, they were able to defeat the Northern Army. I think it was 366. He comes back victorious, and people now started to look at Muhammad ibn Amr as the warrior who actually was able to save the northern Saragossa, and they had so much respect. He was given gifts on the way back. People started to respect him a lot, and by marrying Ghalib al-Nasir's daughter, now all of a sudden he's in a position where he can eliminate al-Mushafi. So he comes up with an excuse that Ja'far al-Mushafi was stealing from the kingdom and end up in jail. Fact is, he actually died after a couple of years in jail. So he was completely eliminated. And so at this point, Muhammad ibn Abi Amr had only one person in the way, who was Ghalib al-Nasiri, and from there he could reach his goal. But this time Ghalib al-Nasiri started to realize, oh, okay, he's in on his son-in-law's plan. That at this point there's no one left but himself. So he decides that, I've been in service for Abdurrahman al Nasir for so many years. I've been in many battles and wars. I'm more skilled, and I think I should be the Khalifa, not him, or I should be the Hajib and the Grand Vizier, not Muhammad ibn Amir. So what he does is he invites him to his castle for a feast and a dinner, and then while he's eating, he starts to close all the doors, raises a sword, and he's about to kill him. Muhammad ibn Abi Amr realizes, he jumps over the table, he jumps over the fence or the wall and breaks his legs, but jumps on his horse and runs for his life. He gets back to Cordoba, and then he decides that he would go to war against Ghalib al-Nasri. And Ghalib was a great military, talented leader, but all of his service in the cause of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ended up in a very bad way. He decides to go and ask for assistance from the northern kingdom of the Christians, and raises an army and goes to fight battle with Muhammad ibn Amir. But you kind of start to think, wow, how does he change so bad? However, right before, the two armies are face to face, um, and basically he just stops and says, Ghalib al-Nasri looks at, his commander, and says, hold, let me go. I don't feel well. Let me go back to my tent. So he goes back and just raises his hand and makes dua. It says, if I was right, Allah made me victorious, and if I was wrong, take my life. And whether that is a true story or not, but very shortly after, not even before the war, the fight starts, Ghalib al-Nasri actually dies in his position, and the fight stops. People moves back to Abi Amir behind them. He becomes victorious. He comes back to Cordoba, and at this point, there's no one else but him. He stages a fence around Al-Zahra and the Qasr, the palace where Hisham II is staying. At this point, Muhammad ibn Abi Amr is the ruling figure and effectively ruling the entire kingdom. Hisham Athani is in the palace. Nobody can access him. He cannot leave. Nobody can enter without the permission of Muhammad ibn Amr. Um, he's effectively making all the decisions. He's doing all the management and the governing. Muhammad ibn Amr actually in the next few years goes on and have 54 battles with the Christians in the north, and he actually wins every single one of them, which is very, very extremely rare in history to find a person who's so talented in so many different ways as Muhammad ibn Abi Amr, who's able to not only establish a very strong government, distribute wealth, expand, bridges and Jama, the Grand Mosque of Cordoba, other structures. He built Medinat al-Zahira and so on. But he's also a military. leader and a figure who never lost a single war or battle. Muhammad actually, Ibn Abi Amr reached places in the north that nobody else, Abdurrahman al-Nasir, Abdurrahman al-Dakhil, or even Tariq ibn Ziyad that ever reached to that far. Um, there are examples of how he was feared in the West, that when he died, it was a celebrated event everywhere across Europe. Um, Mohammed Ibn Amr is a real example of how when you plan, when you learn and plan and execute, you can reach your goal. A person who started from absolutely nothing, worked for everything that he wanted to be, positioned himself in the right place, acquired the skills that are needed to make your dreams come true, believed in himself pretty well. He was ruthless. He was determined. He was just. He did everything that he planned to do and executed very well. I think if you were in his position, you kind of probably think, close your eyes and think, if you were Muhammad bin Amir, I think you would have to believe that 100% your goals will come true if you believe in yourself. I said this many times before, positive mind will deliver positive life. I don't think you would probably disagree that if his mind was a negative mind, he would have achieved what he've achieved. Muhammad ibn Abi Amr is a great hero of Islam, a great hero of unknown Muslims are forgotten that we need to all think of. You find that a lot of people talk about him, that we need to draw with gold water his name everywhere so that we know who's this person who never lost a war, who was able to build a peak knowledge of and modern life, establish a true government in Al-Andalus. He is Muhammad ibn Abi Amir. You also can be the next Muhammad ibn Abi Amir if you follow the steps of three highly successful Muslims. I'm very excited to talk to you about the next character. Stay tuned, and I'll look forward to talk to you again.